What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, your host and deputy sports editor at the Miami Herald, and I am joined once again by my co-pilot on this show, David Wilson, who returns this week after a one-week hiatus. And boy, is he returning at the right time. He is just in time for the game of the year, ladies and gentlemen. The time is finally right. We've been waiting for this one for a couple of years now, as we've seen both of these schools dominate for some time, but now they're finally going to face each other. Top two teams in the county, top five amongst the top five in the country right now coming into the week. Central and Chaminade. David, we're finally here.
Yeah, we've been waiting like literally years for it. So pretty exciting that it's happening. I was glad to be out at, we'll obviously talk about it, at the Chaminade's win against American Heritage on Friday. And obviously pretty quickly, a lot of the post-game conversation shifted to the Central game. So yeah, there's a definite excitement. You know, obviously Chaminade was trying to downplay it, but just like the excitement in the football scene is really noticeable. It's like hard to remember other than like state championship time. Probably there, maybe some of the Central Northwestern like 5 years ago when both were powerhouses. Like there haven't been a lot of these recently, a regular season game with these kind of with this kind of hype around town.
Yeah, it's weird because it's not like it's not necessarily a rivalry,
right?
But in the moment, like this week, it'll feel like that, and both teams will crank it up a little extra.
Yeah, we have to go
show.
Central, like the year, or Northwestern Central, the year Northwestern's last state championship. They both won the state title that year. Mm-hmm. It was probably the last time, or maybe even before that, when Tutu was playing there. Those were some big games. So yeah, it's been a little while since we've had one like this.
Yeah. So this big game, of course, we'll dive in depth like we talked about before. We said we were going to break down the game this week, but we'll also have a lot of other games that are important as well. A lot of key district contests this week, too, as we start to dive into that part of the schedule. Remember, real quick, if you're watching this at MiamiHerald.com, you could also catch it. Please do watch it also on YouTube. It's going to be available there as of Wednesday as well. But let's jump right in. We'll look back first at week 4. Some interesting developments, and that puts us right back at that Miami Edison squad, because you mentioned Northwestern. That this team has really, we knew they were going to have some growing pains, but Edison really took advantage last week, and I can't remember the last time Edison beat Northwestern, I'll put it that way, but it did happen last week. You thought they finally had some sunshine, some good weather. Would it be 2 in a row? Nope. Back to bad weather. The game first gets postponed on Thursday at Traz. They move it to Saturday. And then guess what happens? Even more lightning. They don't start the game until 9 o'clock at night almost. But once they did, the Red Raiders persevered, led by Juice Joseph, their talented running back, who, again, had over triple digits in yardage. There was 129 and a touchdown. But one thing I want to point out is the defensive effort, because 17-7 victory for Edison. It shows you how much that team has improved on that side of the ball as well. Let's see what Juice Joseph had to say after what Luther Campbell called a historic win for their program.
All right, Sterling, coming off a 17-7 Edison win, I asked Coach Campbell this, but what's the mean to you? Northwestern's only a couple blocks away.
Yeah, man, this is personal. It's personal. I got friends over there, man. We've been chirping all week. I'm more of a quiet guy, but we got telling they gonna blow us out, this, that. But we know why we play. I've been a model all week. We know how we gonna come. We don't do too much talking.
And what do you think about your own performance today? Edison relies heavily on the rush, and you had a touchdown today and several big runs.
I got the best line in the nation. Forget the state, I got the best line in the nation, so that's on them, man. We just pounded. That's our game plan. We go pound. That's what we did. Yes, sir.
Are you getting too big of a load because it's so focused on rushing, or you're ready? You like it?
I'm built for it. Different. Built for it. I was ready for it. It's in my blood.
All right. Lastly, Stone, you're 3-0. How's it feel?
My first time in my high school career. Feels great, and we just upset the Bulls. But now we feel me the 24-hour rule. We gonna celebrate this, that. Now we on the next week Lakewood up in St. Petersburg. So we gonna celebrate this 3-0. We trying to go 4-0 now.
Juice is quickly becoming one of my favorite players this season. He's always animated, good kid. But this is for Edison as well. 3-0, good start for this team. I think they were in the playoffs and were a team, one of the better teams in town until about 2 years ago. Kind of fell off the last year or so, and now looks like Coach Uncle Luke's got them looking like a playoff team again. This victory, David, I think puts them back. Last year they missed because the whole district situation and all of that, but a victory.
Yeah, they were in just in a brutal region last year. They play really hard schedule most years. I remember last year, They played Rickards. They went up, I think, to the Panhandle at one point. Like they play. They don't shy away from the out of town talent. Like, is it going to Lakewood this weekend? That's been a really good program for a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean that's a kind of win, right? Like last year, they met. I think probably them and Northwestern both were like 500, 6-4 in that range, and in that region still, even though Northwestern's a little down, you got to win. Like those are kind of like playoff games, basically. It's never that simple because of the point system, but. I mean, that's a good win for an Edison team that probably, even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, were probably still one of the, like, I don't know.
Well, they were close.
Teams in the state, right? Like it's not like they were just bad. Like they're better than a lot of teams that made the playoffs. They were stuck in a brutal region.
If there was probably two teams that were hard luck cases that missed because, for example, like St. Brendan winning that district, and I think it was Gulliver, those were two spots right there. But two teams that in another situation would have made it would have been them and Jackson. Jackson's a little bit more down this year. So this victory, other than Booker T, every other game in that district for Edison is winnable at this point. So, I mean, that's why it's such a big – this was kind of like the 50-50 matchup that they had to have. So let's see what Uncle Luke had to say. We get Uncle Luke on the show right here.
All right, Coach Campbell, I think I heard you describe this win as historic. I mean, these guys, Northwestern, they're only a few blocks away from you. What does this victory mean?
I mean, listen, man, I tell them all the time, in order for you to be state champ, you got to be hood champ. So you got to go to the Northwest. You got to go to the Northwest. That's the most historic school in the state of Florida. When you beat them, with that rich tradition, I mean, you beat the best. You beat one of the best in town. So, these kids fought hard, and they wanted to come and win that game for more reason than one.
And what'd you see from your defense today? Only gave up one single touchdown to Northwestern. They've been good all season, right?
That's big time. Our defense been holding us together all year. The offense struggled early on, and they continue got to work out some things. Our defense is incredible. I mean, that front four and and Jet and the DBs back there, I mean, they're coming together. It's coming together the way we expect it.
What's it say about your team that, Northwestern kind of had a surge in the third quarter? They scored a touchdown. You guys could have, given up the lead, and you didn't.
Yes. I mean, it shows that's what we talk about. We talk about every day. We talk about going through adverse situation. In life, we go through adverse situation. It's how you react. You know what I'm saying? It's how you react after you go through adversity. And so if you look at our bench, our offense was settled down. Everybody was, in chill mode. It was just a matter of us getting back on the field and doing what we had to do. And our defense, again, I mean, they're going to make some hits. That's going to turn momentum every time.
Coach Luke doing a great job with this team because, with all the obstacles they've had so far, to stay the course and be 3-0 right now, like we said, in good position where if they can continue to ride that momentum, like big, they have a big one, like you said, with Lakewood, still a talented team on the road. On the flip side of that, Northwestern in a real bind now, heading into the teeth of that schedule at 1-3. I mean, Columbus is next. I believe they play Cardinal Newman after that. And then, of course, down the road, they still have to play Central. They still have to play Booker T. I mean, we knew it was going to be a growing pain season, but, this was one of the games they had to have if they were going to at least have maybe a shot at the playoffs. Now not looking so good for the Bulls.
Yeah, it's as we said, like we knew it was kind of going to be a rebuild situation for them. I think we were both pretty optimistic after the way the first couple of weeks of the year went. Right, they had a close loss against good team, got a win early on against Jackson, obviously, but they're a really young team. We should probably note too, right? Like they're clearly. They clearly went in with the intention. Obviously, it's Northwestern. The goal is always to make the playoffs and contend every year. They clearly went in with the intention of saying we need to kind of build things back up a little bit because it had been, it's been a little while since they were really like a state title contender. So, I know they're impatient there at Northwestern, but I think it's kind of the right course of action that they're taking.
Let's head up to Broward now. Let's talk about the powerhouse of St. Thomas Aquinas was back on the field this week after that controversial victory over Cocoa, which stood, even though Cocoa appealed it to the FHSAA. We talked a lot about that last week. This week, no controversy, though. They just came out and dominated Western, a good Western team that was trying to bounce back from a tough loss to Coconut Creek. Justin Montgomery was a big reason for that, had a couple touchdowns. Here's one of them to get the Raiders on the board. silver lining for those Wildcats who have gotten off to a rough start is Davy Belfort, who we've mentioned a ton, the Virginia Tech commit. Hard fought game, had a couple touchdown runs. Here's one of them to keep Western in it early on.
Touchdown, Western.
But it was simply too much running game, too much passing game. Stacey Gage here seals the victory for the Raiders. Now, even though we knew that the Raiders were able to run the ball this year, the interesting storyline developing, though, is the development of Andrew Indorf as the starting quarterback. And he had a good game, probably his best game of the season. Maybe not statistically, but in terms of how he commanded the game, finished the 190 yards, a few touchdown passes, led them to that big win. Let's hear from Andrew and how the first half of the season has gone so far.
Andrew, kind of talking about the performance, tonight, you guys got off to the fast start. They kind of got back in it, and then you were able to, hit some plays and put the game away.
Yeah, we were slow. We had a fast start, but then we started slow, in the second quarter. We were missing. I should have kept some balls that I had, and that just slowed down our offense. And then we got stopped on the goal line twice, where it should have been 6 points instead of 3. So we just got to work on that and work on driving and finishing the drive.
Now, you obviously have a lot of playmakers, and your first year as a starter. Are you feeling like you're getting more confidence, getting the ball to all your guys and kind of making the offense click?
Well, yeah, I have a good relationship with JT and Chance. We're boys, and yeah, I've been working on them all offseason. So I already know how they run their routes. I know how they like it. But we got some new guys that I just got to get familiar with, and we'll be good.
Yeah, overall, what do you take away from this one?
We just had too many mistakes. This score shouldn't have been this close. It should have been a blowout if we should have scored 60, but we'll get on it. We got film tomorrow, and we'll study and get better for the next game.
The key figure for Aquinas right there is how well this kid really settles in and command this offense, because the weapons are there. We know that James Madison, Chance Robinson, the backs, the defense, also a bunch of playmakers. But if this kid, I think, not to put all the pressure on him, but I think Indorf is going to dictate whether they complete the drive for 5.
Yep. They've obviously always got as much talent as anyone in the state. I can't remember if I said it on the show or just talking in real life. It is interesting that they found so much success with the Zion Turner read option. Obviously won 3 straight state titles as the quarterback there. Then last year Hezekiah Harris comes in and pretty much runs the same thing. Now he's at Army, so you get the kind of player he is, obviously. And now they've gone back to a little bit of a different, more of a drop back quarterback approach. Obviously they still lean really heavily on the run, but they don't necessarily have that read option threat in the same way that those other 2 guys gave it. So I'm not surprised it's taking them some time to kind of click as an offense. But they still, obviously the ceiling is still really high there.
Yeah. And this will be a perfect segue now as we go to the game that you were at last week, David. Chaminade, the latest victim in their gauntlet, American Heritage. A lot to unpack in this one. Another great game from Jeremiah Smith. The return of JoJo Trader, who we were wondering how much longer he'd be out. He's back. But the interesting wrinkle here was after the fast start, kind of a mediocre by Chaminade standards 3 quarters later on after they jumped out to that big lead overall. But let's look at some of those plays first. Chaminade jumping all over Heritage early on, and that was Curtis John Vieira, and I think the pick 6 counter now for Chaminade this season is up to 5, I believe, with this one. Take a look. Good. By the way, great job getting that little high five there by the coaches. I thought that was really funny at the end. You hardly ever see the reaction and the play in the same shot. But a good shot there. That put them ahead. And then here are a couple of dimes from Cedric Bailey to Jeremiah Smith. Let's look at this first one, a dart into the back of the end zone for a touchdown. And another one. But then here's the part we were talking about. Heritage starts to chip away a little bit. Byron Lewis gets in the end zone. Suddenly it's a 21-10 game. But despite some sloppy play, and here's where the depth of Chaminade that we'll talk about later on, Arwin Jackson, not even Bullet Gauze, Arwin Jackson seals the game for the Lions. Now, even though the game was pretty much settled at this point, I love the way you phrased this in your tweet, the elite speed of DeAndre Desenor. Let's show the fans this one. I mean, it looked like he took 3 steps and was in the end zone. I mean, it was like, I mean, he is unbelievable. Even at North Broward Prep, you knew how talented this kid was. The addition he's been to that backfield, it's going to pay off down the road for the Patriots. So, I mean, put him and Byron Lewis together.
He had a really good kick return too. He's like a real weapon for those guys. Yeah,
unbelievable. But Chaminade the victor, and let's see what Damian Jones had to say.
We do, and I respect them because they play. There's a lot of teams in the area won't play, and they line up every year. So I respect them.
How about the drive that Tommy selected for you? 86-yard drive.
I mean, that's what we do. We practice that stuff every day, man. Situational football, and we've been in that situation where we're down 6, down 7, and got to run the clock out. And that's what we do, man. You practice it, it happens, you know?
How hard was it to keep your kids' minds off of Miami Central?
We didn't even think about Miami Central at all.
Now you can.
Now we can, but the focus was Heritage all week. Central didn't come up. Just like we don't talk about state championships. Until we get there, that's when we talk about it. No need to talk about it.
Damian, was this game kind of like you thought? You knew they were trying to be physical with you. How'd you kind of see it?
Yeah, we got so much stuff to clean up. It's a shame, you know? And the thing is, like I tell them every week, nobody can stop us but us, all right? And we did that. We made a lot of mistakes.
Obviously, that first quarter, you guys are up 21-0 in kind of no time. Was it just after that?
Yeah. So, I mean, Head is a good football team, man, you know?
What's it mean to get JoJo back?
Oh, come on, man. Why not? He's going to...
I just wanted you to say. Yeah.
Hey, what do you like about that first quarter? Obviously, pick 6.
Fast, we came out fast, and we came out fast last week as well. So, just a big ordeal, man. I'm happy for the win. On to the next. Out of the first 5, grueling, you know, we down to 4, now we got 5. It's been a tough schedule, but hey, man, it's good to get up and play week to week, you know?
This freshman running back you got, Lord, talk about him a little bit.
Arwin Jackson, man, he's a dog. He's a dog. And if he ever get a crease, he gone. He's probably the fastest player on our team.
Really?
Yeah, he's track high. He can go. He's probably sub 10-4. He can go.
Similar to like when Bullet was a freshman and you had that. Obviously they're different players, but
100%.
It's funny that he finally, that's the first time I think he's acknowledged that it's a 5-game grind like that. You know, coaches don't like he doesn't like to jump ahead of past an opponent or anything like that, at least not, you know, in these type of interviews. But I mean, could that have just been why maybe a little shakiness in the second half from what you saw? I mean, it didn't look like anything that can't be correctable.
Yeah, it was a lot of penalties, a couple like holds to like derail drives. You know, and Heritage is good as he pointed out. Like, they got obviously the pick 6 right away. Like, it's not even like the pick. They did go, I think, 3 and out on their first drive of the game. Then got a pick 6 on their first defensive possession, and then obviously Jeremiah Smith's going to get you a couple times. You know, I think I was pretty impressed by Heritage. I think they've been, you know, hard to say like a nice surprise when they were literally in the state championship last year, but you know, we wondered they were young. They lost a lot from last year. I don't know if they're like significantly worse than they were last year. Like they're probably a little bit worse. You know, anytime you lose Mark Fletcher and Brandon Ennis, but they're still like in that clear elite tier. Chaminade again, like I think get rid of a couple penalties, you know, a couple like, you know, a short punt here and there. That the game is probably in control a little bit quicker. But again, it was still like they were up 21-0 and we're in control the whole way. So they controlled the tempo and all that kind of stuff. So it never felt like they were at risk of losing.
Yeah, it feels like we said before, it's just a lack of experience heading into the season, not a lack of talent for Heritage. And then on the Chaminade side, like I'm not worried just because of that. This team has really shown what it can do against all the top level competition now going into this game. But let's do two things at once here. Let's switch over and talk about our players of the week. A reminder, the player of the week polls are up at miamiherald.com. So vote as much as you want. They're open. They're not behind the paywall. You can vote as many times as you want for your favorite players. I say two things at once because we're going to acknowledge two big wins this past week because we're also nominating key players from those victories. And let's start with the first one being Columbus, who blanked Palmetto 15-0, continues to dominate in recent years that series against the Panthers. Hector Chavez, a name that we mentioned a lot last season, had a huge game, over 10 tackles, led that Columbus defense. Columbus had to deal with a lot of rain, a lot of lightning delays themselves in that game, but were still able to blank. I think they held Palmetto to only 57 yards of offense, or 75 yards of offense, something really, really small, and were able to get that victory. Across the county in other sports, Jackie Taylor, the daughter of Sean Taylor, great girls volleyball star at Gulliver Prep, same place her father went to, posted 13 kills and 9 blocks to beat previously unbeaten Ransom Everglades. That's always a good rivalry game for them. Gulliver only 1 loss so far on the season, and they look like they're on course to potentially make a run at state. Joshua Ruiz, the cross-country runner at Belen, set a new state record with a time of 14:38.79 at the Southern Showcase in Alabama. Belen cross country, we know what they can do. They're a state championship winner almost every season, but this year looking like a national title contender of how good they are. And they pretty much have run every race out of town, all the elite races around in other states, and they're showing why. And boys golf, a couple of winners. Remy Bacardi, someone you're familiar with, David, always a champion there, won the Youth Fair Invitational once again. Looks like she's off to another great start. And Daniel Vanososte at Divine Savior also won the Youth Fair Championship. So those are your Dade candidates. Switching to Broward, here's that other key victory. Coconut Creek, man, have they gotten off to a good start. I mean, they follow up the big win over Western by completely dominating Plantation. Another great defensive performance, 36-6 rout over a much improved Plantation team. Jordan Thompson ran for 143 yards on 20 carries, including an 11-yard touchdown run. He was the big performer on offense for the Cougars. Those Cougars continue. Well, this will be one of our picks later on in the show. They go to Blanche Ely now, a key game for them, probably to decide that district eventually down the road. And another team on the football side, we have a few football guys on the Broward side, but one want to note here, Samuel Mitchell IV for Pembroke Pines Charter, believe it or not, the school's first ever 4-0 start. He had 4 sacks, 6 tackles, including 5 for loss, forced 4 fumbles, and recovered 1 to lead them to the 21-0 win over Taravella. So congrats to the Jaguars, their first 4-0 start. Everglades football, Makari Tucker threw for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead the Gators to a big win over Coral Glades. At West Broward, Joshua Moore, receiver we know very well as well, David, caught 7 passes for 111 yards and 3 touchdowns as West Broward ended up winning 23-3 over Palm Beach Gardens Dwyer. And in golf, also, Alexander Weinberg for Pinecrest shot a 5-under 67 to win the Palm League Boys Golf Championship. But a lot of action. I mean, going back to those Cougars, that team, probably the breakout team in Broward. When you go past the obvious ones that we thought, this team has taken another big step in the right direction this year.
Yeah, always. I mean, fun to kind of see a non-traditional power kind of take step forward, and hopefully they can keep building on it. Yeah,
let's transition right into that. Let's go right to our picks for Week 5 on the list here. Like we said before, the big rivalry game, and Blanche Ely, 13-game regular season winning streak on the line in this game. They'll be hosting on Friday night against this Coconut Creek team. Last year they beat Creek 28-21. That was kind of the first big win for them that sprung them on that run that got them all the way to the regional finals. This year, though, at least it's kind of, let's see what Ely's got. They haven't really had a major test yet, and this Creek team has 2 signature wins back-to-back. I kind of like them on the road this time around to maybe snap that streak. I think it's going to be a great game, but I think Creek has enough this year. They're making a statement. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Creek too. Another game that's not officially on their schedule. They were taking it to Monarch in the preseason.
Right.
And Monarch obviously a week later ends up beating a national top 50, top 75 team from Georgia. So yeah, I like Coconut Creek. That defense is really good. They've kind of, they're under the radar, but they kind of have like had great defenses for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Like they don't always have the star level talent, or they have with the Mullen brothers who have all gone through there. But they always have a lot of good defensive players.
Yeah. And another game, their only one loss, actually a respectable one too. They only lost by 1 score to Gainesville, Georgia, a team that was ranked also in the top 20 nationally and on the road. So Creek looking like a legit team for sure and a playoff contender. Let's talk now Aquinas. We mentioned earlier, we showed you some of the highlights of their victory last week, and no rest for them. They get a pretty good Treasure Coast team at home this week, Friday night at St. Thomas Aquinas. Treasure Coast with a few big wins. They're undefeated as well. I think, though, St. Thomas is kind of finding their stride at this point, and if Vindorf continues to play well, that might be all they need to really kick it into gear and go on a long run here. I'm going with St. Thomas. What do you think?
Yeah, I like St. Thomas here too. This was actually Andrew Indorf's first start. He started 1 game last year up at Treasure Coast. They won a close game. So I like him to win again this year.
So that would put St. Thomas on a roll there. And now let's switch over. Actually, not switch over the location. Still in Broward, but this game is one of the more intriguing ones this week. I'm looking forward to this one. Dr. Kropp, very improved team, taking on South Broward, a team that's 4-0 right now. Both these teams feel like they want to be kind of where Creek is, where they're making the big statement. Much improved team. This is kind of the telling point. And I was really torn. I didn't know who to pick in my column this week with this game, because Chris Wheatley Humphrey was the reason I sided with the Bulldogs. I think he, the commit, I think he will help them take control late and maybe win this game. But Kropp has a lot of athletes. Jamal Hagans is a lot better at quarterback. Khalil Pascal, leading the defensive side as well. I think this comes down to the wire, but I wonder if South Broward, because of Wheatley Humphrey, maybe has a slight edge.
Yeah, I've got the same reason as you. I think that he's going to be the best player on the field. I think those two teams are really even. Obviously, as you said, last year that was a 3-team tie for that district. Everyone seemed to beat everyone else. And, so those are evenly matched teams, I think. And I think it's a good showcase game for Chris Wheatley Humphrey, who, even though he's a Miami commit playing at South Broward, goes under the radar a little bit. But this is a good defense we'll be playing against this week.
Yeah, and last year the irony was South Broward beat Kropp 34-19.
Right? Yeah,
and then Kropp beat
right, and then Kropp beat MacArthur was the third team that tie. Yeah, so really even group of teams there, obviously.
Yeah, this year I think it's probably these two. It seems like it. I mean, MacArthur, we'll see, but this one might settle it outright in the long run. Now, Miramar taking on Dillard. This is obviously 2 traditional names, 2 teams that with a lot of history in Broward County and as powerhouses. I think Dillard a little bit rebuilding this year. This is a chance for them to maybe make a splash and pull off an upset at home. But Miramar is picking up a little bit. I think they're finding their stride a little bit too. I think the Patriots handle this on Saturday night down at Dillard. What do you think?
Yeah, it'll be interesting at Dillard. Just to be different, I'll go with Dillard. I think it's another really evenly matched. Between this and Ely Creek, 2 teams that probably, 4 teams that aren't like championship contenders or anything, but are just probably good teams and kind of cross county rivalry games, and games I think should be really competitive. I'll go with Dillard because they're at home in this one.
All right. Well, now, long last, here we go. This is the big one. Chaminade Central. Before we make picks, just want to go over this a little bit and do a little bit of a breakdown. To me, this game really comes down to I think it's going to come down maybe to the running game. I think up front, especially on Central side of the ball, Central has to be able to run the football. And I'm not saying break a Jaden Ford, break an 80-yard touchdown run. No, ball control, give their team a chance, set up the passing game. And remember, these quarterbacks are still kind of settling in for Central, and you got to keep that Chaminade offense off the field as much as possible, the way they have all those weapons. But again, that's where I kind of like what Chaminade's defense has been doing, because they've been opportunistic, they've been stingy. I mean, they have really not allowed a lot of points this entire season. So when you look at the matchups, it's very hard for me. I rarely ever, I think you as well, we rarely ever pick against Central because we're so used to them just out-talenting everybody. But that's the kind of team that Chaminade, this is one of the best, just in terms of what they're doing this year. they look like one of the best teams I've ever seen down here. And I got to give them a slight edge, even at Traz, where the crowd mostly is going to be in Central's favor.
Yeah, you said we very rarely pick against Central, but we also very rarely pick against Chaminade. Like we probably even less. We probably pick against them less frequently. Obviously, they don't necessarily play as tough like a district schedule and all that kind of stuff. I think they're just slightly more complete than Central right now. I love Central's offensive line. I really like their defense. They've got, Armando Blunt is having a monster season, just committed to Miami last week, and is like kind of stepped right into that Ruben Bain role and doing that Ruben Bain kind of production. I just think Chaminade's a little bit more complete, right? They're a little older. They're more experienced, especially on offense. Senior quarterback who's one of the best in the state. Obviously, we know all about the receivers. JoJo Trader, who had been out, got back in against Heritage on Friday. Made a couple big plays, good, easing his way back in. Obviously, they wanted to be full strength for Central. And then you mentioned the running game. That's the thing that Chaminade can do, is that the receivers and the quarterback and all the, those 60, 70, 80-point games get a lot of attention. But they beat Heritage by, I think it was a 16-play drive with like 14 runs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they can just do that to you. And when they need to put the game away or get a score, and obviously they can do it with their explosion, but explosion only takes you so far. You need that other level, that 4 yards on a per play that you can get from a great running back and a great running game. And I think that's what they have too, that sort of can put them over the top. I think they have more ways to beat you right now than Central does.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking too. They can beat you every which way they can imagine. Even on special teams, like they have guys making plays right now. And I think the quarterback maturity, I think we talked about that at the beginning of the year. I mean, Cedric Bailey has really shown that it's not just that he has all these weapons. He makes those throws. And we saw it earlier in this episode. Those were darts that he's throwing too. Unless this Central defensive line just disrupts them. And that's the other point I wanted to make too. They run this no huddle that's at a breakneck pace, that offense too, that keeps you on your toes. Right. You can't substitute too much. And can Central handle that? And can they disrupt that and get consistent pressure on Bailey? And then if they do, like you said, then they're going to try to beat you with the running game. Mm-hmm. So it's just such a 3-4-headed monster that they have, that even for a team as talented as Central, it's going to be such a challenge for them to slow down. We'll see. I still think it's going to be a great game. I think it may come down to a possession, maybe, 1 or 2 scores at most. But they just seem like they have too much this year. So let's see what happens. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, this team, like we said, Max Preps has Central 4 right now, despite the one loss to Bishop Gorman. The winner of this game, I mean, other than maybe Mater Dei and Bishop Gorman, you got to put them, and IMG, of course, that's undefeated. You got to put this team right in the mix of that national title, the victor here. Even more so if it's a Chaminade team that emerges 5-0 with all these quality wins that they're going to have at that point in their pocket. I can't see this team not being at least in the top 3 if they win this one. What do you think? Yeah,
I mean, I think, I've said it, I think since the beginning of the year, if Chaminade runs the table, they're going to be the national champions because of that schedule they play at the beginning of the year. They obviously they play their state championship, I think still, although I don't know if we even have the schedule yet. They typically play their state championship a week earlier than everyone else, which gives them a chance to go play a national game.
David, we don't even have a location.
I know, we don't have a location yet. So I wasn't sure if we had a schedule yet. I knew we didn't have a location.
Not to rip the FHSA, but it's like, guys, come on. I mean, let's go here. I mean, we're like almost at mid-season.
Yeah.
But you were saying,
they're set up for, and this is the year for them to do it, right? With all those guys being seniors. Central, a little bit harder for them to maybe win a national championship when you already have a loss to Bishop Gorman, as good, as impressive a loss as that was on the road, close. But yeah, I mean, I think Chaminade in some ways has like more at stake because of that, but obviously Central, like those guys get motivated for everything pretty much.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think all of that stuff, all the intangible, jacked up, all that is going to be there. It'll manifest early on, but it could also bite you if Chaminade jumps ahead, like they've been doing, like they tend to do. They get that 14, 21-point lead. You're buried at that point. I mean, forget it, especially the way this defense is playing. So it could be a classic. I think it will be. I think it'll be one of the better games in recent memory if it lives up to it, the talent on the field. So we'll see what happens. We'll be back next week to recap that and many more of these key district games and continue to move on with the high school season. For David Wilson, I'm Andre Fernandez. We thank everybody, as always, for watching Titletown South Florida, and we'll see you soon.